Alyssa Taylor Amos from University of California, San Diego. Alyssa Taylor is going to give us a deep dive into what she presented at the ASEE annual conference last June on communication, which I think is a very timely talk, right, for January, as communication obviously is getting lost. So without further ado, welcome, Alyssa.
Thank you. Here, let me share my slides. Nice small group, which I like. That's okay. Hopefully this looks good. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, I planned for a quick intro overview and discussion with Christine. So it's going to be just overview, and then I hope we can share ideas and see where this takes us in this general topic of communication. This is something I wanted to share with you all because it's one of the newest efforts I have done in my class, focused on communication centering towards more like ice breaking and community building and getting students comfortable with each other, not so much written communication, although it's applicable to it, because I adapted this technique called yes and, which I'll go into more detail. Most of us know about it, from our improv, either experiences going to shows or maybe when we've tried it before. But it's pretty well known. And one of my colleagues had done this in her class that I actually, was substituting for. And so I tried it out. So big shout out to Dr. Esther Kwan at UCSD. I have her to thank for this. And to be honest, I was really hesitant to do it. It's totally outside my comfort zone. I'm not a theater person at all. And I was really nervous about it. And that's the other reason I wanted to share it with everyone, because it was a really good lesson for me in that, putting yourself outside your comfort zone, you can have the best experiences in class. And I was actually kind of blown away by the student reception of it. And so that's really the motivation for wanting to pass it on to you all, your community. And so the context that I used it in was on a graduate level. These are first year PhD students, and they are getting prepared to write their proposals, their graduate research proposals that are due over the summer for us. And so I taught this in the spring to get them ready. And so in this class, we're thinking about creative new ideas. How do you build upon existing ideas in the literature or in your lab, and propose new innovations that you're going to basically propose for your graduate research. So that's the overall context for my application, but I encourage everyone to think about this widely. I was hoping just a shout out to Jen Choi, actually, because she ran into me at BMES and she told me that she adapted this after hearing the ASEE spiel that I gave. And she used it actually for teamwork. So as the icebreaker for teamwork in her senior design class. So totally different application, but I thought that was really exciting. So I encourage everyone to think kind of broadly about what you could do with this, whether that's ice breaking or things like that. And just a little bit of a background. It's yes and is a warm-up exercise done in improv. There's been some findings, in particular from the University of Chicago, partnering with what's called the Second City, which is a leading improv theater and training center. They found that this exercise can improve communication. And so I like it because the idea is to feed off of each other, so everyone else in the group, in a positive way. And at this point in exercise, it's almost like brainstorming, in that there's no such thing as a bad idea at this point. So I'll talk about that a little more in a second, but how it works just logistically is that each person, once their turn, they accept the previous statement. So whatever the previous person said, but then they add new information to it. So why were we motivated to use it in class? Well, it's been shown already to improve communication. I like it because it goes towards building community and getting comfortable with each other, because you're adding to previous ideas and building off each other in a positive way. And so whether it's explicit or not, you're really encouraging the acceptance of other ideas, right? They could be really silly, depending on what the prompt is with improv. That's half the fun. But there's this subtle undertone of like, you laugh at what the previous person said, and the atmosphere in the room is just really positive and just really fun. And kind of gets over that intimidation barrier that a lot of the students feel, you know, especially as we're getting to know each other in the classes. So that's why I really liked it. And like I said before, the next step, you know, is to add new information in a narrative, and you always have to use and, hence the yes and call. And I showed this at the ASEE, but I think this is pretty funny. I just want to show you how it goes. So if I were to start off with, and what's really fun about this activity is you can think of any prompt you want, any starting sentence. It could be what's happening around campus. You know, you look out your window and you see some construction going on. That could be inspiration. Or you could do it more scientific, like diffusion is everywhere. That's my prompt, right? You can go anywhere you want with it. But this is just how it works. So the first person would say, okay, your prompt is to start, the river is full of fish. And then you go around a circle and one of them says yes, and one of them is enormous. Yes, and he's swimming towards us. Yes, and he looks hungry. And then you say, yes, and we're trapped in this boat. Yes, and the motor won't start. Yes, and he's about to swallow us. And yes, and now I remember this boat is also a plane. So something completely ridiculous, but still fun. and then ends with, yes, and lucky for you, I just got my pilot's license. So what I like to show my students is you go from something very unrelated to where you end up, but that's the whole point, right? And we draw the analogy to proposals about how we have to, you know, build on what's existing, but kind of take it in a new direction. So that's kind of a fun example. And then I tell my students explicitly some of the principles that I'm trying to illustrate with this activity, so they understand, I think, the motivation, the context, instead of just having them get up there and do it. I like to, you know, set the stage and show them why I care about spending 20 minutes doing this or so. And so I tell them that the yes portion of it is encouraging the acceptance and contributions of others. And then instead of immediately judging an idea, which we have a tendency to do, especially in the design process, for example, you explicitly say that judgment, you know, it has its place later on in the development process, not right now, not during our fun brainstorming activity, which you can, you know, illustrate parallels to the brainstorming process in biodesign. And then the next step in the process is to add new information. And the concept here is to sway away from directly changing the suggested material, but you're building upon it explicitly with the word and. So that's, you know, simple concept, but I think effective. And then I tell them to think about how this is useful across settings. So anywhere from, you know, having a conversation with a peer who might be struggling, you know, you're hearing them, you're accepting what they're saying, and you're adding something, but you're not changing the subject or negating what they said. Yeah, to a clear application to engineering brainstorming work. And then I also encourage them to think about how maybe some of their favorite leaders, if you really pay attention to how they communicate and talk with others, you might hear them use this. This is a really commonly used technique. And maybe you can find a leader that uses this, and you kind of have your ear tuned for that. And so just want to give you all as educators some ideas on how to run it. It's a really simple thing to do. The group size can vary a lot. I had a group of about 20 in my class, so we just divided really organically into 2 groups, which I thought worked really well. I think it has to do with the space you have. You don't want it to get too loud, but you figure it out. 6 or 7 work well too. It doesn't really matter too much, which is, I think, really nice. There's some flexibility there. What I found worked well is just having the students go in a circle versus having to remember like who to point to. But traditionally, also you could just point to someone who's going to go next. And then the point is that everyone in the group has a turn. And then when you're done, you can have a new round. And when I did this in class, I was really pleasantly surprised, even though I had many, you know, relatively shy students. They were all asking to do it multiple times. So I was like, okay, you guys want to do it again? That's great. Let's do it. And so I had them come up with like the next prompts. I think I gave them 2 rounds and then they wanted to keep going. It was hilarious. And it's really nice, you know, with all the stress we're all under, just to hear the whole classroom laughing, right? So it's just a really good thing, I thought. And then I just reminded them about like some of the rules, like, and it's funny because I actually got caught up. I messed up the first time with not saying yes and. So like it sounds really easy, but when you're on the spot, you kind of forget. So you have to remind them about the rules. So doing the yes and yeah, obviously considering the previous statement and adding to it. And then I also, when I am done with the activity, I think it's really important to wrap up and give them the space to like reflect on why we just did that. So it doesn't just feel like, I don't know, silly or something like that. And so I asked them to think about, why did we just do that? And so I had my ideas that I shared in terms of like, well, it's important to value each other's ideas. And we just illustrated that through a quick activity. And then also just talking about how creativity is also so important in our fields, right? We can get bogged down with the technicalities, but it's also really important to be creative. And also it gives them a little bit of practice in effective communication. They kind of have to put themselves out there. And the more we put ourselves out there, gets outside our comfort zone, I think the better we get. So it's just good practice. And then I just let them reflect on, there's a lot of situations that we have good practice in, lab meetings, journal meetings and stuff like journal article meetings, whatever, where we have practice being critical, but then there's also the space for just being creative, brainstorming and building on ideas of others without that judgment factor at that stage of the process. So kind of thinking about those different things that we bring as engineers. And these are just my personal reflections. I mentioned it before, but honestly, I was like hesitant to do it. It was a new class. I'd never done anything like this before. So I was like debating, and I'm just really glad I did it. It was really great. And I was pleasantly surprised by the students embracing it. Even first year PhDs, they weren't too, cool for it or anything like that. They loved it. So I'm really glad I did it. And then I appreciate like Jen Choi, for example, telling me about how she's adopted that idea in her class. And I would love to hear if anyone else has chosen, now or in the future, whatever, to do things like that in their class. I'd love to hear about other ideas that people have. Hopefully this is just gets people thinking about another great icebreaker activity they could do or something like that, which are always useful, right? So that's really all I had, Christine. So that was kind of my thing in a nutshell. So I'd love to hear from the experts in the room about other things and communication in general.
Thanks. That was perfect.
Thank you.
So just as hi Nicole is coming in, we unfortunately our other speaker today, Shannon, got sick very last minute. So we have Alyssa, who just gave a lovely quick talk on which is nice because it gives us time to reflect.
Yeah.
Speaking of reflection. On her yes and activity that she presented at the ASEE Education Showcase. So hopefully you can, if you wanted to chime in. So I have not tried it, but I do have a senior design class that I think always needs icebreakers in the beginning, especially as Yanfin has probably tried with teamwork things. They're very good by the time they hit seniors to just go to their friends.
Mm.
But their friends and them all have the same experience, skills, right? And it's frustrating because then you get these few that are ostracized, or even more importantly, the transfer students who maybe haven't been there since freshman year, right? That you're like, no, include them.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, they got like really good skills. Like you guys are missing out, Our transfers are great. So I think this is a cool one that I want to try. Sure.
Yeah, I
But
think
maybe
because it forces
Nicole,
everyone to talk, or everyone has to participate. Like even if it's, if they want to, everyone's involved, everyone's in a group, so they have to do it.
yeah. I don't know, Patricia and Nicole, have you guys tried this at all, or?
Yeah, I either have giant lectures or labs, for the most part is what I teach. And so in group discussion is not always something that we do. Would you do this in a 100% lecture? Is it how,
Depends on your space. You could break into a lot of small groups. It'd be really loud,
right?
but you could do it. I think I haven't tried it in a large class myself.
Right.
I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
And it's not really set up for discussion in the round. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I can see this being a great activity for your large class if it's like a nice day and you can go out and spread your students out on the lawn or something, and that would be really cute.
well, that's a great idea. They always want to, I mean, on the half a dozen really nice days that we have in St. Louis, where you would actually want to go outside. Not too hot, too cold, too windy, too wet, too dry.
Yeah, but I really love this idea. It really ties in with something I do in class, and I never thought about doing something like this, where when I teach design for our first year students, when they are in their kind of like their like solution ideation phase, I follow something called the creative problem solving. And one of the rules for creative problem solving is this idea of yes and. And I've always just told them,
Oh,
oh, the rule is yes and make sure you don't shut down
oh,
other people's ideas. And I just say that.
yeah,
But I love this activity because it pairs with that really well, where we can use this activity as a way to really showcase this concept and get them used
yeah.
to it before they go into their design projects and start working on their solution. So I really love that.
I love that idea.
I'm
I
definitely
like that.
going to have to do this in class the
Yeah, like a
next fall when I
plug-in for
teach
that.
it.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
like that too. I like that idea. Putting it together. Cool.
Yeah, and I didn't know the history of it. I didn't realize this yes and rule came from like theater and all these things. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
No, I have Dr.
Yeah.
Kwan to thank for educating me on. And also I show my students, I didn't have it in here, but I show them a really funny clip from Tina Fey talking about improv. And it's pretty funny. It's just on YouTube. I don't know. So just another way to introduce what are we going to do in the next 5 minutes if you feel like doing that kind of thing. But you can find your favorite example. I think then the students got a kick out of that as well.
Oh, I love that. Would you be willing to share your slides that you use in class for
Sure.
this?
Yeah, it's really close to this. But yeah, I can put together. Sure.
That would be
that'd be
amazing.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna look for now the Tina Fey. It's an
Yeah,
improv.
I want to see that
Yeah,
now.
I'll find it. It's in my slide deck that I use for class, so I could just send that. You can find it. It's funny. I don't know. I'll find it. It's linked on my PowerPoint, so.
Okay.
But you might find ones that are better. I kind of just did it like, okay, I gotta get ready for class. Let me find a good example. And she's pretty good, so it's pretty funny. I forget, she was being interviewed by someone. Let me see if I can find it. But yeah, I'm happy to share. It's pretty I don't know, didn't take that much time, not much stress to prep. And so I am interested to see how undergrads react versus like grad students, because these were like first year PhDs. So I don't know. My experience,
Yeah.
undergrads could be a little more shy, but I'm not sure.
And
I think it depends on the batch. Some of them are super shy and some of them are just like flying off the walls. So
there's always a culture of the group, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Do you like listen in and supervise tightly, or do you just
Well, actually, it's really funny. I was in one of the groups because I was just participating with them for one of the things. So yeah, that's what I was laughing about, how I messed up the first time and we all laughed so hard because I was like, oh yeah, I got kind of caught up in it. But yeah, so but kind of then like later, I just kind of had my ear open because I wanted to hear what was going on in the rest, and the energy was just immense. That was my favorite part. So yeah, and it's not hard to hear. I mean, I only had 2 groups, right? So it wasn't hard for me to listen in. When it's a huge class like yours, you'll be making the rounds maybe or have them spread out. But
I just wonder if it's likely that a group will kind of diverge from the
well,
program.
that's a different, like, so I don't know, they were grad students and PhD, they were definitely on task. They're used to, usually in class I'm having them write or do peer review or something, so they're used to having to stay on task. But I don't know, undergrads maybe that's why you wouldn't want it to be too long. You would just have a couple designated rounds and just be like, this is what we're doing. Like, just don't give them too much room to get off task. I don't know what everyone thinks about that, but
Mhm.
And I could see it definitely being useful on the first day of class, really, and with the freshmen, just establishing that it's okay to speak.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. My other favorite icebreaker, and it's like tangential, but like first day of class, I love to do what's called the story of my name. I don't know if anyone has heard about this activity. Yeah, you have. Yeah, that one is good because just what you were saying, Patricia, like it's okay to speak and just getting them used to like day one, like talking about.
What's it called?
It's called the story of my name. I actually learned it from my advising team at UW. I can just tell you in a nutshell, it's really good because it's a really quick icebreaker, and basically everyone goes around the room and you introduce yourself and you choose one thing to talk about with your name. And so what's really good about it is you can choose to say as much as you want or as little as you want, or take it in any direction. And I always give them examples. So I say, so my name's Alyssa Catherine Taylor Amos. So you'll notice I have 2 last names, Taylor Amos. Why is that? Well, and I launch into like, that it was a compromise between my husband and I because I wanted to keep Taylor, but he wanted me to be Amos. So I went to my grandpa and said, well, if you were in Chile, which is where we live, where my family lived for many years, you would be Taylor Amos, and there would be no debate. You just take the last name, but you keep yours. And then every time I always change it up. Like sometimes I'll talk about my Fraser roots, about my Scottish roots, and the family motto crest. And that's really fun because the students usually will say like, well, I was named because my mom was reading this book, and then this is her favorite character, and then we all laugh, and like there's some really great stories. And I like it because it's very flexible onto what the students disclose or like what they choose to say. And so everyone feels like everyone's pretty comfortable because you can say as much or little as you want. And it just gets energy up and gets people, like Patricia was saying, getting used to talking, like just setting the model that like you don't have to be quiet the whole class,
Right.
So that's one of my favorite icebreakers.
Yeah, I like that one too. I also use it. And it's great because when people tell a story about their name, it
Yeah.
helps you remember it later.
Yeah,
And so that's really
exactly.
nice. I
Yeah.
learned from a friend of mine, she does a variation of this where you say the story of your name and then you come up and then you say a little bit about yourself, like something you like to do, and you come up with an action. So it's like if you like to swim, you say, oh, I like to swim. And then like you have your action, and then the whole class have to say, oh, Alyssa likes to swim. And then you have to do the action. And then this only works in small rooms. And the next person will say their name, explain their name, and then do their action. And then you will say that. So Christine would be like, oh, I'm Christine. I like to read. And maybe her action is opening a book. So then you go, Christine likes to read, and Alyssa likes to swim. And so you go
Oh my
around the whole
gosh.
room that way.
Whoa.
And so it really helps you like remember people's names. And then it's funny because in the rest of the semester, you see someone, it's like, oh, I don't remember your name, but I know
Yeah.
you like basketball. You're this guy. So
I like
yeah,
that idea.
it's a
I like
fun
that
way
idea.
to,
Okay,
yeah,
I
it's a
prefer
fun thing
that
to do on
one.
the first day of class. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, especially for like, like a smaller size. Like what if you're doing some summer program or something like that? That's a great
Yeah.
idea to build. Oh, I like that. Thank you. I'm gonna use that one. Build on my story, my name idea. Okay, well, that's great.
Cool.
That would not work in a class of 200.
No,
No,
that
it would
would
not.
be interesting.
No.
I would be very impressed if someone memorized 200 names and actions. So
Yeah,
We
and they'll
do
be
have
like, see,
little
this is why I
study
don't
groups.
memorize names.
I'm gonna write that down. It's a good idea. Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any good icebreakers, or like speaking of communication? Because I feel like it's so important to set the tone for the class,
I usually do like you do the like think, pair, share, but your reflection piece is like what you want to get out of the class, so I get an idea of like what everybody's interests are, what you want to get out of the class, what your interest is in BME, like because it's very broad.
Yeah.
And then a movie rec, because I'm always looking for movie
Oh,
recommendations.
cool. That's great. Okay.
And it's very dependent on the age group of what
I know, I want
movie
to know what they're
recommendations.
watching these days, Christy. Like, I'll make this reference. I'm like, oh wait, you guys never seen that, or like, you don't know what this is, right? And they're like,
Well,
no.
then the weird thing is like I'll get like high school kids, they're into like new stuff that's coming out. First, second years, they're going like back to shows and movies that are like my generation. And I'm like, why are you watching? They're like, really into Sopranos now. I'm like, why are you watching that?
Oh.
Or like, I'm really into like, like this show that was from 10 years ago. And I'm like, really?
That'd be really useful because I always feel like I can't relate anymore. I'm like, oh yeah, wait, you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll make a reference.
Yeah, or I Google, like as I do it, I bring my phone and I Google what it is, and I'm like, some kids, I'm like, you have a really messed up, like, like you're really into like weird horror stuff, like,
You're like, I look at you different.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's all right. I'm gonna have to run too.
Yeah, no problem.
Class
Okay.
coming up. So thanks.
What do you
Good
think,
to see you
Christine?
guys.
Should we wrap up, or what do you? I mean, I'm happy to